Well, good morning. 1 week ago, we were able to celebrate 948 new graduates from Emporia State. And like me, maybe the reason that you are in higher education is because it gives you an opportunity to invest with your time and talent in the future. And Emporia State's future is bright, as are the futures of our graduates. Among our graduates, there are so many students to celebrate. I think about students like Caleb Barber, who came to Emporia State as an undergraduate and as a new father, competed as a student athlete, just finished his undergraduate degree and will be joining us for a graduate degree in the fall. And in the Garrett family, thanks to Emporia State's generous tuition waiver, we now have an ESU degree holder as well. Our daughter Tori finished her MBA degree and had a wonderful experience in ESU's online MBA program. And as we move into summer, all of us are working hard toward fall. So I really appreciate each of you taking just a few minutes to pause and talk about some of the hard work that we've been engaged in over these last few months. We've been talking about higher education funding in Kansas and ESU's budget for some time now. And I'd like to spend just a few minutes giving you an update and also opening it up for any questions that you might have. As you may recall, ESU's enrollment was the strongest in the system last fall, but that's a very oblique way of saying we were down the least. We were still down by 49 noses. Every year, our costs increase just as they do for any business that you might identify. And state funding of higher education in Kansas, when adjusted for inflation, is down more than 20% over the last few years. This year, in the middle of a pandemic, the state cut our funding again, though not as much as the governor had originally announced that she planned to cut us. So we knew going into this year that we were headed into a difficult period of time from a budget perspective. In making decisions about Emporia State's budget cuts, many of you worked closely with your supervisors to identify areas of savings. So thank you for that work. And I relied very heavily on your colleagues who served on our budget review committee. Faculty and staff leaders were invaluable in helping us understand where cuts should and could occur. Nationally, on the average, universities are cutting their budgets by 9 to 10%. This spring, we identified 5.7% in reductions to be taken over the next 2 years. This includes $4.8 million from our base budget and another $800,000 or so from auxiliary units like Residential Life, the Union, and the Student Rec Center. The reality is there are no easy places to make cuts. In higher education, about 2/3 of budgets are people, salaries, and fringe benefits. This means that our budget cuts will impact several of our colleagues, and this is painful. These individuals are our valued friends and colleagues, and the fact that certain positions were cut doesn't mean that those individuals weren't doing good or important work. Specifically, as we look at Emporia State's positions, about 760 positions are here at the university, but we've cut 54 full and part-time positions and had some work schedules reduced over the last year or two. So let me take just a moment to kind of break down what those cuts look like. You may remember that a few months ago, we offered a voluntary early retirement incentive for employees who were 60 years or more of age and had 10 or more years of service with Emporia State. 32 of your colleagues accepted that early retirement incentive. And for those of you who are retiring from Emporia State, we wish you all the best. We'll try not to become too jealous if your Facebook posts show you enjoying a lot of the things that retirement has to offer. Of those 32 retirements, 14 positions will not be refilled. We also had 23 vacant positions that are not being refilled. And we announced just a few weeks ago that 12 of our colleagues had their positions either eliminated or their hours reduced. Some of those colleagues are leaving us in the next few weeks, and some of them will be leaving us next year. In addition, last year we had identified just a handful of positions that were being eliminated this year. So all told, we're down by around 54 positions. Individuals who have been notified of the termination of their positions have been offered assistance in several forms through human resources. And as you interact with colleagues who may be impacted, please be sensitive and helpful. As I said before, this is not a situation where the work that people were doing isn't important, or whether they are or are not good people. They are, and the work is important. We have to make some very difficult and painful decisions. Some of those positions were faculty and some were staff, as you might expect. Let me talk for just a moment about the funding picture for Emporia State. And really what I'm about to say applies to other universities in Kansas as well. The federal government is, as you may have heard, sending additional COVID relief funding to universities like Emporia State. By law, we have to spend at least half of that funding on student aid. That's great news for our students because they will be getting additional student aid for those who are here in the fall with us. The other half of the funding will go toward lost revenues and some very specific things that COVID funding is allowed to cover. It's sort of like I want a whole rainbow of widgets, but I can only spend this COVID relief money on the yellow widgets. And this is one-time money, so it does not help us with our budget on a long-term basis. Something else that has been happening over the last few weeks has been some changes with respect to the state budget. So let me take just a moment and tell you what's been happening. You know, when we talked in March for the last town hall, we did not have very much information on how our state budget was going to play out. The governor had submitted a budget in which universities' funding was cut substantially. Some, but not all, of the governor's proposed cut was restored by the legislature. So we're grateful that a portion of the cut was restored by the legislature, but we still are expecting a cut. And then there's one more very important wrinkle. So if everyone was ever thinking, I should write a play or a soap opera about state funding, this is the time to do it, because there's a really bizarre wrinkle that's come up in just the last 3 weeks or so. In order for the state of Kansas to keep the federal COVID money that it has received, the federal government requires that states continue critical state services at pre-COVID levels. When the analysis is applied to higher education in Kansas, Kansas fails that test. And so now the state is scrambling to figure out how to put some money back into higher ed. The state budget officer estimates that the state needs to put somewhere between 85 and 105 million back into university budgets. The state is going to try putting about 53 million into university budgets and is hoping that the federal government will grant a waiver that lets it get by with just the 53 million. We sure hope that works, but it does feel a little bit like a Honda Civic playing chicken with a Mack truck. The other thing that is true of that funding is that that will likely not be permanent funding. So what you're hearing is there are some funds that may be headed our way. They are not permanent, and they are very, very limited in what we can spend that money on. And that is true of this funding as well. So as we look forward for Emporia State, what do we expect in the future? And I have to tell you, I remain incredibly optimistic about the future of Emporia State because I know the caliber of people that we have here at ESU. I know your hearts. I know how much you care for our students and how much you are engaged in supporting our students. ESU's strategic plan continues to be our blueprint for the future. We're going to continue to focus on those things that in the strategic plan we said are hallmarks of ESU that are important to what we do. One of those you may recall is high impact learning experiences, focusing on the ways that we can engage our students in hands-on learning. And there are so many ways that we do that in frankly amazing ways. When I see students out seining in Worcester Lake or doing research, I know that we do a fabulous job of providing those high impact experiences. We will continue to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that's something that is incredibly important, not only to ESU, but to the future of higher education. Just yesterday, I heard a presentation at KBOR regarding Kansas demographic trends. And as you listen to Kansas demographic trends, it is so important that we focus on supporting all of our students and providing them with what they need to be successful, continuing to remain accessible as a university to students here in Kansas and beyond. We've got to continue building our DE&I muscles for the future. You know, ESU is a great university, and we're going to continue to do a phenomenal job educating our students for lives that contribute to the common good. We'll continue to work on enrollment initiatives at both the graduate and the undergraduate levels. We've got some new and exciting programs in the works, things like our Master's in Nursing or our MBA program with Tsinghua University, which, if you haven't heard about that, Tsinghua is the Harvard of China. We're doing an executive MBA program with one of their subsidiaries. This fall, we'll have a Master's in Sociology. And whatever your function is, here at Emporia State, everyone counts. Whether you're teaching a class or doing research with students or keeping our buildings or our grounds looking great, or caring for students by counseling them or taking care of their medical needs or helping them enroll or get funding, whatever it is you do, your job here at Emporia State is incredibly important to supporting our goal of helping our students complete their education. I hope that you're enormously proud of Emporia State, and our faculty and our staff and students continue to do great things. Just this week, I was able to share some of those recent things at the KBOR meeting, and I want to share those with you because every time I hear about these sorts of things, my heart just wells up with pride about the incredible things our faculty, staff, and students are able to accomplish here at Emporia State. So here's just a handful. 6 of our theater students were nominated to compete in a scholarship competition at the Kennedy Center American Theater Festival. And that's a huge number of students for us. And I'm so proud of our theater department for figuring out how, in the midst of a pandemic, to do productions. Just a couple of weeks ago at the Wichita area chapter of the American Chemical Society, ESU students received first place in both the poster and oral presentation categories. And ESU science students also won at the Kansas Idea Network for Biomedical Research Excellence in poster and presentation categories. And if you've been over on the other side of I-35, you've probably noticed PAYROC, the Profit Aquatic Research Center, which we're grand opening tomorrow. What an incredible facility. Brent Thomas and folks in biology had a vision, and our facilities team was able to make that happen. And we are so proud of everyone who was able to be a part of that. In the School of Business, we've got some great things going on as well. You know, I mentioned that we've got this executive MBA program that we're offering through the Harvard of China. It will give great exposure to Emporia State in China. Dr. Mary Teal, who chairs the Accounting and Finance Department here, is going to be featured in a nationwide podcast on the post-pandemic future of higher education. We have an AACSB accredited School of Business, and that's the best sort of accreditation you can get if you're a School of Business. And we have an honors society. And for 5 years running, our honor society in the School of Business has received the highest honors possible. And we are the only School of Business in Kansas that has been able to achieve that. One other thing about the School of Business, we have 6 of our members who are competing in the Phi Beta Lambda national competition again this year. For several years now, Emporia State students have been able to win as many national awards as the rest of the Kansas business students combined in competing in that national competition. If you think about our Teachers College, we continue to do great things through the Teachers College. I feel convinced that I have already seen social media about where every single one of our education graduates is headed, because our Teachers College does a great job producing quality teachers for the state of Kansas and beyond. When we look at SLIM, and I don't know whether this is still embargoed, I'm going out on a limb a bit, Usab, if you're listening, but the Library Journal is the international publication for librarians, and every year they do profiles of movers and shakers, and they identify 30 or 40 people who are movers and shakers in libraries around the world, and 2 of them this year are Emporia State graduates. So we've got a lot going on in our academic areas. We have a lot going on with our fundraising campaign as well, and I wanted to give you a quick update on the Together Forward campaign. You may remember that at Founders Day, just a little over a year ago, we announced that we would launch a new campaign called Together Forward. And it might seem a little crazy to announce a campaign in the middle of a pandemic, but one thing we knew was that we might be out there all by ourselves, and it's sort of nice to be out there and in front of everyone else. And more than ever, what we're finding is that ESU alumni and friends and donors are excited about the future of ESU and excited to invest in Emporia State. That campaign has 3 priorities. One is funding those high impact learning experiences that we talked about just a minute ago. The second is talent awards. And talent awards is a fairly broad category, but it includes things like athletic awards. Can we identify donors who are interested in creating more endowed athletic scholarships? Music, art, debate, all of those things are other areas where talent awards play a role in recruiting incredible students to Emporia State. And the third bucket under our new campaign is unrestricted support. And that support really allows Emporia State to be flexible. It means that if we have some students who qualify for some sort of national competition or a football team that gets a bowl bid, we could send those students or the band along to those venues. To date, and if you remember, we said we were trying to raise $50 million. To date, we have raised $46.6 million already toward that goal of $50 million. So hats off to our team in advancement. They're doing an incredible job as well. So we do face a lot of challenges in higher education today, but education is and it remains the very best path toward bettering someone's life. When we educate the students who pass through our doors, and this is why I'm in education, we are not only bettering our students' lives, we're bettering the lives of their children and their grandchildren as well. I grew up in Southwest Missouri, which is an area that produced George Washington Carver. And one of the things he said once was that no individual has any right to come into this world and to go out of it without leaving behind distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through it. I think for all of us here at Emporia State, those distinct and legitimate reasons have a lot to do with bettering lives through education. And we know that students who receive a college education will make much more over their lifespan and have much more stable lives in so many ways. As a university that seeks to serve the common good, that's what we do in our work every single day. We make this place and this world better because of the ways that we serve our students. Thanks so much for tuning in. I know we've got at least a couple of questions already, and so I'm going to turn it over now to our moderator for questions. And if I don't know the answer, I have a panel of experts to help.
Thank you very much, President Garrett. Before we jump into the questions, I want to remind everybody how to submit a question. Go over on your browser to emporia.edu/live. This event is at the top of the page, and you'll find a button that says Submit Questions. That takes you to a simple Google form to fill out. And I will say that if you do have questions, please jump on and ask them, because we only have 2 questions that have already been submitted, and it probably won't take us long to get through those, and nobody likes dead air. So when we're done with questions, President will conclude and we'll be jumping off. So if you do have questions, please jump on and go ahead and ask those. So President, our first question is asking about next year's budget for fiscal year 2023. The question is another buyout being considered? And by this, I'm assuming that our questioner means the early retirement incentive program as the buyout.
Well, that is a great question. And as folks who have been around Emporia State for a long time know, this is something that, while it's done occasionally, is not done on a regular basis. We don't currently have any plans to offer a voluntary early retirement incentive again next year. But I would invite the questioner or anyone else who might be contemplating retirement to stop by and visit with our folks in human resources. We certainly have some things that they can discuss with those who might be thinking about retirement, including for some of our employees, the option to do a phased retirement. And they're just incredibly helpful to people who might be looking at retirement in understanding what a retirement now versus a retirement in a year or two could mean for you in terms of your payouts. And so we don't have current plans to offer another voluntary early retirement incentive right now. But please do feel free to visit with HR if that's something that you're interested in exploring.
Okay, thank you very much. Our second question has a little explanation behind it. Increasing enrollment affects revenue, which would help the budget situation. Emporia State and KU are the only 2 Regent universities that have not yet rescinded the mask mandate. The other 5 have issued press releases with their announcements. As one looks for colleges to enroll in for the fall, this factor, not having to wear a mask and being back to normal, would be something to consider. When will Emporia State follow suit, and how will we announce this so our prospective students will know?
Well, let me answer that in a couple of ways. One is we are in active discussions about the mask mandate, and we will likely make an announcement here in the next couple of weeks about that. But the second is our marketing team and our admissions team have done a phenomenal job of communicating the back to normal message to the students who are in our pipeline. They've also been very good about intentionally using mask-free photos on our social media as much as they can here over the last several weeks. And so I think we've done a nice job of communicating with those prospective students, but certainly whenever a change to our mask approach occurs on this campus, we will make sure to get the word out far and wide.
All right, thank you. We have not had any more questions submitted. I'm happy to wait just a short little bit to see if some more come in. President, speaking of recruitment, I've been seeing out my windows here in Plum campus tours, ambassadors leading prospective students and parents around campus. And that is so fun to see. And the enthusiasm that I see when I run into those groups is also fun. Have you run into some?
I have. And if we look back to pre-COVID, one of the things that was really exciting in the couple of years right before the pandemic was that our campus tours had increased by 30% or so. And what that demonstrated is that marketing and our admissions team are really doing a great job of getting those students interested in Emporia State. One thing that we're hearing right now across the state is that in high schools, counselors have been so swamped with helping students with a wide range of issues that go beyond looking toward college. And I think we may be seeing a bit of a shift in timing. So we're certainly working very, very hard on recruiting those undergraduate students into Emporia State. And it's much too early to predict what the fall is going to look like. But I would invite each of you, if you are out on campus and you see a tour group going by, stop and say hello, because at the end of the day, many times students are making a decision based on the feel of a campus, and this is a friendly place, and I know you all will demonstrate that. Further, if you're in departments around campus that interact with either current or prospective students, you have an opportunity to influence them to either enroll or return to Emporia State. And so please do reach out to those students as you have opportunity.
All right, thank you. And I will say we do not have any more questions, so I will let you finish out this town hall for us.
Okay. Well, again, I want to say thank you to all of you, not just for the hard work as we tackled ESU's budget, but also for the hard work that the entire year has brought. As I think about the people here at Emporia State, I'm just amazed at the commitment that everyone has to supporting our students, whether it's doing that extra cleaning or teaching not only face-to-face, but also making your course materials available online for the students who had to quarantine or isolate. There has just been so much additional work this year. And as a university, we have every right to be so proud of what we've accomplished this year. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful summer. For each of you, although I know for the most part we'll be working over the summer, I do hope you get an opportunity to kick back and relax a bit over the summer. Goodbye.